I will stake my business on this, is that if you track your numbers weekly, if you forecast, and if you prepare months in advance for what you know will come in your restaurant, you will be a more profitable restaurant. You will be a less stressed owner, then you'll have a better business. I am willing to stake my business. I will guarantee that. Hey guys, welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Scott, multi-unit owner for almost 20 years. And now with Ownershift, we help people increase their sales, their profits, and help them actually have a life. That's something we believe, is that restaurant owners should be able to have freedom with their time and have the life that they deserve while also making a great living and having a great business all at the same time. It's just that most owners don't know how to do that. So that's what we're here to teach them. So thank you for tuning in today. This is kind of part 2 of where I'm just going through some of the tools that we use with our clients and, some of the stuff that we do with them that really helps them be in a much better spot. So I'm going to go through this with you. This is what we call our weekly tracker, but some of you may have actually downloaded this in the past. We've really juiced it up this year, and I'll show you exactly what we mean. So I'm just going to I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. So we have this. We basically have a dashboard, is what it is. And it doesn't have to be super complex. The concept is very, very simple. And it's basically that we need to track our finances weekly. So first question, Andrew, why do we have to why do we have to do this weekly? And so what I always say is that if you don't measure your numbers weekly, well, how the hell are you going to be able to manage your business? Number one. But here is how I learned this. So I learned this when I was much younger and naive, because I thought all businesses made tons of money, and anyway, that's how that worked. But turns out it's not. You actually have to, making money is actually not as easy as you would think it is. As the world thinks it is, it thinks it's so easy. It's not. And if you're listening to this, you know that. So here's what happened: it was in my very first restaurant. And I was in a situation where I thought sales was my problem, right? I'm like, man, it's going to get busier. And then all of a sudden, that's when I'm going to make money. And so I think it was like December was terrible. And then like January, same thing. I'm like, oh, it's going to get better. And in February, I'm going to make more money. And then February came around and I didn't make more money. I kept losing money. And then March came around. I'm like, yeah, March is going to be great. Then March came around, sales had gone up. And then I got to the point where it was like May and I had the biggest sales I had ever seen, but I still lost like $5,000. And like during all of this time, like during the January, February, March, I literally cut all of my team except for like 2 people. And I just worked 80, 100 hours a week. And I just did more of it myself. And again, we were a small quick serve restaurant. So you could run it with like 1 or 2 people at a time. So I just basically cut the majority of my staff and I just worked it myself. And I just worked, like some days I worked 18 hours. I was actually still going to a college at the same time. Anyway, I don't recommend that. Well, I don't recommend doing both at the same time. I'll put it that way. Because I would work all day, and then at 7 o'clock, I would take like a night class from 7 to 10. And I'd have someone come in to cover me for that 3 hours. And I'd come back and I'd work 10 p.m. until it was 3 in the morning is when we closed back then. So anyway, yeah, we served a late night market, college crowd kind of thing. So that was the business. But here's the thing, is that I kept saying, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. And damned I was, because it did not get better. And I was like, why? Why didn't it get better? And so I had a bookkeeper at the time, but granted, I don't even think I like read my P&Ls. So I got there 1 month and I'm like, okay, where the hell did this money go? I'm like, we had the best sales I've ever seen since I bought the place. Like, why do we still lose money? What the hell? And so I actually calculated my percentages for the first time ever. And my food cost was like 47%, and my labor was like really low, simply because I did it and I didn't pay myself. So like it looked really low, but if I had actually factored in, me getting paid, it still would have been bad. Anyway, point is, I had some numbers that were off the wall. And so I learned then, hey, I need to be able to change these numbers in order to make money. It's not just sales, but it's the equation of sales minus your prime cost equals what you can have as well. I mean, depends on the way you run it. I mean, some accounts will run it where sales minus cost of goods equals your gross profit. But realistically, like what we focus on is minus your prime, which is food and labor, and that kind of gives you your gross profit. So just, because that's what you have to pay in order to make the product. Anyway, so you can run it multiple different ways. Point is, we want to get to the same conclusion, which is, do we have enough gross profit to actually take care of the rest of our expenses, such as our rent, our insurance, like all that kind of stuff? Do we cash flow enough to be able to pay our loan payments, all that kind of stuff? Anyway, point is, I didn't. And so then I decided to make some changes, but by the time I had got this P&L back, it was the third week into the month. It was like, June, third week of June. And I'm like, man, so even if I make a change today, I have not only lost the entire previous month, but I also lost 3 weeks into this month. So by the time I make changes, I'm already a month behind. And so I'm like, there's got to be a way that we can adapt earlier, right? Because I can't just wait for my bookkeeper to do all this stuff and then send it to me. It just takes too long. And I need to make changes faster. So the answer to that is we track our numbers weekly. Now, they are not going to be absolutely perfect, but they are going to give us a window to be able to see what's kind of going on under the hood of our business. And so we'll be able to understand if we need to make change quickly. So very, very simple. I'm going to start with this piece. What we track, and again, nothing crazy here, but we track how much of your sales comes from food, alcohol, if you do like catering, stuff like that. For some of you who only do food and no alcohol, no catering, just one column, we basically just track your sales. Like, what sales did you get? Okay. We also want to track your guest count that comes in. That's pretty simple. Next, we want to calculate your cost of goods sold. Right? So what is your food cost? What is your alcohol cost? You break those down if you have those. If not, it's all just one line, literally how much did it cost to make the product and how much did we sell? What percentage is that? And then the next one is your labor spend. We want to understand what your total labor spend was for the week. And so what this does is it kind of breaks it down to say, okay, here's what my prime cost is. And so when we start to put numbers in here, so I'm just going to put in some numbers. Let's just say, let's keep it simple, 15,000, and let's just say 5,000 was the food spend and 5,000 was your labor spend. That gives us a prime cost of 66.67%. And I did that because each was roughly 33%, which, in a lot of restaurants today is fairly normal, but it means that your prime cost is actually way too high. And it means you will make less money as a business overall, and you won't be able to achieve the peak profitability that you're looking for, which is probably why most of you are like, I'm busy, where'd all the money go? So 66 is too high. So we like to see that between 55 and 60. That's kind of where like the sweet spot is. Like 55 is pretty much the sweet spot where you don't go too deep as far as like, everything's still running well, but you make the most amount of money. So in that ballpark is kind of where we like to see that. So, but here's the deal. So now we know that, and now we can say, hey, so what do we need to do to change it? So we all of a sudden understand what we need to change, right? So this is phase one, is just understanding the numbers. So it's so funny. Like I was on this call with this prospect once, and she said she was considering going and working with us or Margin Edge. And now I have nothing bad to say about Margin Edge. I think the product, once you get it set up, actually, looks really nice, gives you a lot of crucial data. Great. The downside is it takes a lot to set it up, like a lot of work to do that. So she was like, either I'm going to go for you guys or I'm going to do Margin Edge. And I asked her, I'm like, okay, so do you think that just knowing the numbers alone will be what you need in order to change it? Like you get the numbers and then you're going to be able to take the action. You're going to be able to fix it. And she said, yes, that's exactly what I believe. I'm like, okay, well then go and do that. Get the numbers and make the change. Of course, we heard from her later, and she had spent 3 months actually getting all the numbers in there really, really perfectly. And then she was like, but it didn't change. I'm like, yeah, because you actually have to like change things in your business to make your numbers change, right? So when I say this, tracking is step one. We just have visibility and understand our current situation. And then from there, we take action to change the numbers that are on the tracker. So I want to make sure that's clear to everybody, because just knowing your numbers isn't enough. It's knowing plus action. There's a quote. What do they say? It's like, knowledge is power. And I say knowledge is only power when combined with execution. So that's my take on that phrase, and that's what I talk about a lot. So, okay, so we've got this understanding of where our numbers are, and if you don't know how to run your numbers like this, pretty simple, just take your cost of goods sold, divide it into your sales, same thing for labor, that will give you a percentage. And so that's the numbers that we're talking about. So now here's where we went a little more interesting with this. What we actually did, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of see we added a sales forecasting tool. Now, why is sales forecasting important? Because if you're going into a busy week, you're probably going to need to order and staff for it. If you're going into a slow week, you probably need to order and staff for it. Guess what? There's like no 2 months are the same, and your restaurants are seasonal, right? Like we have seasonal fluctuations. No 2 months are the same. No 2 weeks are the same. And so we need to be able to prep for those differences. So here's a perfect example of how I learned this was that when I knew that April was going to be busier than March, right? So what happened is we would basically say, okay, so we know that we need to staff up a little bit from what we had this week. And so I used to do a weekly year over year comparison. And I used to say, okay, so we're up X amount. Okay, let's add to this. And then, we just adjust our hours. We added a few more hours every week as we were in April, but our sales kept climbing faster than we made adjustments. And so everyone was just constantly stressed for 6 weeks because we were always understaffed. And then the same thing happened when we just tried to adjust, this week, it was slow, so let's cut a little bit. Oh, the next week's slow, cut a little bit. We were always over in labor as we went down the other way in our winter period. So it was just we weren't forecasting properly enough and we weren't planning for it. So we had excess inventory or not enough inventory. Both are stressful. One takes money in your bank account. One takes time because they usually ask you to fix it, which I don't recommend, but that's a story for a different day. So the point is we need to forecast properly. And so what I love about this tool is we actually start putting in our last 4 weeks sales. And what's cool about it is that we actually, as you fill the tracker out, it automatically populates all this stuff. It's pretty neat that way. So as you start entering in your sales, it does the trend comparisons and then it does a month over month comparison. And it basically uses, I think, something like 16 data points to calculate what that should be. Yes, you may have a tool that does this already. Awesome. Use it. Sometimes there's sales forecasting softwares, or maybe it's a scheduler where you can kind of do that. That's great. So utilize those things. If your POS has one, utilize it. That's the whole point, is that most people might have it, but don't use it. My thought is how do we make it simple so that we just use it? That's what we need to do. So what we do here is we also start typing in your salaries, your average, your target cost of goods, your target labor. And so what's cool about that is combining this with the forecast and our targets. So let's just say as I said here, we're 33% labor, 33% food. And so say our target's 30. So we start putting in that target of 30, it will actually start doing a weekly forecast. So this is how much there's going to be for sales. This is how much you're allowed to spend for your cost of goods. So literally give you a number that you can then give to your managers or whatnot and say, hey, we have to stay under this number. And then for labor spend, it has both a weekly allotment of hours. So when you're making your schedule, okay, I've got 150 hours to use. I've got 200 hours to use. And it'll tell you that. And so then you have to make your schedule based on that allowable amount of numbers. And so what I usually do with our clients is say they're currently at 33 food, 33 labor. We go down by 1%. 1 week, and then we go down another percent the next week, and we just kind of move it down. So we're making progress, but we're not also drastically changing things too much. So we can learn to handle it. And it's just based on the forecast. So what I love, and this is one thing that I eventually did with my management, is hey guys, here's the amount you can spend for food. Here's the amount you can schedule. And you have to come in with those numbers, and you have to prove that you met those numbers and bring them back to me. So that's what we did. And so just having the managers know how much food they're allowed to have makes things it makes them just think about before they add on that extra case of chicken or whatever. We went through a ton of chicken. So whatever it is for your business, before they add on that extra case, they're going to be okay, do I really need it? And now the other great thing too is once you start forecasting and you look at these, you can actually use what's called a descending dollar budget. So basically you just takes the number you've got for the week, and then as you enter in purchases to it, it just brings the allowable amount down. So eventually you get to zero. Anyway, easy tool to use. You can do it on a back of a napkin for that matter. But whole point is that we need to be able to have that. And then if you are budgeting properly and you still need to order more food, then you know that there's a problem somewhere, right? You know that either your menu needs to change as far as the way it's costed. Maybe there's portioning problems. Like you can tell that there's issues that you need to use, right? So that's one piece. Now, if we go down here, we actually have a year-over-year performance calculator because it really grinds my gears that people look at their numbers month over month. So they say, well, in January we did this, but now February is different. I'm like, of course it's different. It's a different month. Like January is not February. December is not January. November is not December. Like, come on, people. It is different. Like, they're different months and we need to treat them as such. Like, he wouldn't say, this looks like a great apple, and then look over and hold an orange in your other hand and be like, this looks like a terrible apple. No, because you'd be a freaking idiot. So, like, you don't compare two totally different things and compare them as one. They're going to taste different. One's going to taste like an orange, one's going to taste like an apple. You need to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges and January to January. You get my point. Sorry, I just got fired up about that. So the point is we need to look at our year-over-year trend. So like January to January, February to February. And that's how we really know how we're doing. Because the only benchmark we have is like, are we doing better than we did last year? Are we keeping up with the industry average benchmark? And those are pretty easy to find. So that's the kind of thing you want to see, like from a sales perspective, how are we doing in comparison to our numbers last year? Not last month, because all of a sudden, like I'll give you a perfect example. Like was it January? There was a big like cold storm or like ice storm or something. Anyway, in a lot of parts of the US, there's like massive snowstorms. And all of a sudden, it's like, hey, so like you can't compare that week where you had this gigantic snowstorm to a week where you didn't have a gigantic snowstorm. Like, doesn't make sense to compare those two because they're fundamentally different, right? So we just have to make sure that we don't compare those. But what you want to do is, we just need to kind of see how we're doing year over year. So that's the point that I wanted to make. And we need to look at our calculations based on that and based on ourselves. Okay. So what's great about this is you can easily enter your number from your P&Ls and it will calculate, the change that you made both in profitability and your cost of goods and your labor, all that kind of stuff. So that's a great way to track that all in one place. And then we even have the other side of this. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, it scrolls over and there is more. On here, we also have our February, March, and April forecast. We're basically forecasting sales for the next 3 months because I talk about this a lot. We need to plan ahead. We need to know what's going to happen. We need to prepare for it. And I even took the painstaking amount of time that it took me to write all this out, but exactly what you should expect in February, in March, in April, how you can prepare for it, what you need to do now. And there's also a place at the bottom where you can know the thing that you noticed from this month so that when you go next year and you're planning for your next year, you can reference your notes from this month. That's actually one of the biggest things that most restaurant owners don't do is they just think, oh, we finally solved this problem. We'll never encounter it again. Well, guess what? You're probably going to encounter it the same month next year. So you might as well write it down and prepare for it. So we have to understand that things are cyclical. They come back around again. So you might as well prepare for it. So in this weekly tracker, we have all of those elements. At the bottom, we have a monthly summary as well. But what I really encourage you guys to do is no matter what you do, whether you use our resources or work with us or whatever, but the things you need to do, number one, track your numbers every week. Number two, forecast so you can anticipate whether what you're actually spending is in line with what your targets are. Most people don't even have a food or labor target. They just spend whatever they think they need to spend and then wonder why their numbers off at the end of the month. Of course, because you didn't plan. You didn't actually have a target. How can you hit a target if you don't have one?
Restaurant owners, before you open more locations, stop. I've seen way too many owners go from 1 to 2 to 3 to bankruptcy. I know because I was once there myself. The difference in owning multiple locations is how you have to change, and if you don't make the shift, it'll take years to recover. I took my 3 biggest lessons and put them in a free ebook called the Multi-Unit Playbook so you don't have to go through the same struggles that I did. Go to the link in the description below and get your free copy today.
So we need to forecast, and then we also need to plan in ahead. Now, I will stake my business on this, is that if you track your numbers weekly, if you forecast, and if you prepare, months in advance for what you know will come in your restaurant, you will be a more profitable restaurant. You will be a less stressed owner, then you'll have a better business. I am willing to stake my business. I will guarantee that. Take that to the bank. If you run your numbers, forecast, and plan. If you do that stuff, yeah, you'll be better. No shit, right? So, but the problem is that most owners don't do it, which is really a lot of where we come in. Like, to be honest, like some of the stuff that we teach people is not radically different, but we actually just, it's in the execution. Like, I have a personal trainer right now. No exercise have we ever done is one that I have never, like, I've not done myself, or that I have, didn't know how to do. Like, he has never taught me anything that I didn't already know. So why do I pay him the money? It's because he yells at me if I don't show up. So that's why I pay him. Because me and my personality, I love to work. Actually, it's a lot of fun for me. Like, business is fun. It's a game. And so I find that when given the option of, I can go and like hit the gym and work out, or I could do work and like, make changes and like, solve this next problem, I will always default to solving that problem. I will always default to work because I enjoy it. And I'm also the type of person that, like, if there's stuff that is hanging over my head that isn't completed yet, like, I'm like compelled to complete it. And this is my personality. You guys may be like that too. But anyway, point is, I will always choose work over the gym. So one day I was like, I need to find a way to override that so that I actually take care of my health as well. Because I in the past did take care of my health, but I was very strict and I prioritized the gym over the business. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to prioritize one over the other. So this is how I made that happen, is I'm like, 3 days a week, he will yell at me. So therefore I need to make it there. And so that's just the choice I made. Not because, he was telling me it was different, but because my physical health is better, because I'm actually doing the things that I should be doing. And really, when it comes down to it, we can have a million ideas. You can have a million pieces of knowledge. You could read 10,000 books, but if you don't do anything with that knowledge, your life will be exactly the same. Your business will be exactly the same. You'll be in the same place. So that's one of the big things. So out of all the stuff I talked to you today, if you do nothing else, start tracking your numbers weekly. Create your own spreadsheet if you have to. Start forecasting. Even if you used, the previous month. So like right now it's February of 2026. So if you use January 2026 and January 2025 and compare them just to get a trend line on whether you're going up or down, use that to kind of assess it. It's the easiest way to start. Yeah. So just do something to make your business better. But if you do that, you'll be in a better place at the end. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know. Feel free to shoot me a message or whatever. But yeah, at the end of the day, we want to be more profitable. We want to be looking at our numbers, because if you stick your head in the sand and don't look at your numbers, your bank account will always disappoint you. And that's one thing I've learned personally. So we got to get ahead of it. And once we see the numbers, then we got to make change from it. And that will make your business better. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll see you soon.
This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.